Good afternoon and welcome to From Where We Are, stories of news and culture through the lens of USC and Southern California. I'm Katie Havens and we're coming to you live from Studio B in USC's Annenberg Media Center.
And I'm Sophia Ketterer. It's Wednesday, February 26th. On today's show, President Trump makes negotiations with Ukraine, UC workers go on strike, and we meet the new president of USC's undergraduate student body. All that and more
From Where We Are. But first, today's headlines. The GOP's budget resolution was adopted by the House on Tuesday in a 217 to 215 vote. Now set to move on to the Senate, this resolution advances President Trump's legislative agenda. Details of the budget include $4.5 trillion in tax cuts and an allocation of $100 billion towards immigration and enforcement and military. All House Republicans voted in favor of the budget, except President Thomas Massie of Kentucky, who voted along with Democrats against it.
Michaela Batista and Emma Fallon were announced as the new undergraduate student government president and vice president on Tuesday night. The pair won about 37% of votes against three other pairs running for these offices. President Batista says that she plans to make student organizations her top priority, providing resources and workshops to aid in the recognition process. More on this later in the show.
President Donald Trump has announced his plans to offer a so-called gold card visa, which would grant very wealthy buyers permanent residency in the U.S. and a path to citizenship. The price for this path to U.S. citizenship isn't cheap. Trump says he wants to sell these cards for a whopping $5 million. He claims they will, quote, sell like crazy and calls them a bargain.
The LA County Regional Park and Open Space District distributed $17 million to enhance green space and expand parks and trails in Los Angeles. These grants were announced on Tuesday. They'll create or revitalize over 620 acres of parkland and natural spaces around the country. Multiple cities and communities are benefiting from these grants. These include South LA, Santa Clarita, and Altadena, where the money will be used to conserve open space in the fire-ravaged area.
NBA player Luka Doncic got his revenge on his old team last night at Crypto.com Arena. The Lakers walloped the Dallas Mavericks 107-99, and Doncic dropped a triple-double during the game. He was shockingly traded to the Los Angeles Lakers by the Mavericks earlier this month. This game was the first time the Mavs have played the Lakers since the trade occurred.
President Trump has been talking with Ukrainian and Russian leaders in an attempt to broker a peace between the two nations. Russia invaded Ukraine 3 years ago, prompting a war that's continued ever since. Part of Trump's plan, gaining access to Ukraine's rich mineral deposits. Talia Wexler has the story.
As the Trump administration works on its plans for ending the Russia-Ukraine war, it's also pressing Ukraine to sign a new deal, demanding access to mineral resources in exchange for continued U.S. aid. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky says the deal could be a big success, but he sees the current version of the agreement as only a framework. In a press conference today, Zelensky said he would like to see more security guarantees for Ukraine before signing the deal. He also added that he plans to discuss these guarantees further in his upcoming meeting with President Trump on Friday. Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, estimates that the country has around 5% of the world's critical raw materials, including rare earth metals that can produce weapons, electronics, and other important products. Ukraine also has a significant supply of graphite and titanium, among other minerals. In exchange for aid and security, Ukraine would provide the U.S. with the right to mine these materials, which have been eyed by allies throughout the 3-year war. So what are these materials, and why does the U.S. want access to them? I spoke with Aaron Celestian, the curator of mineral sciences at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. He explained why these materials are desirable to the U.S.
Lithium is an incredibly critical material for new batteries, all kinds of other devices, and the Ukraine has a ready supply of it, unlike the United States.
According to the BBC, Ukraine is home to a third of all the lithium deposits in Europe. Celestian also explained how graphite is an important resource because it's used for technology devices and steel manufacturing. The Ukrainian Geological Survey state agency says Ukraine is one of the top 5 leading countries for graphite supplies. Celestian added that titanium, another mineral in the exchange, is important because it's a very light and strong metal used for aircraft manufacturing. Ukraine also has significant deposits of beryllium and uranium, which are critical for building nuclear weapons and reactors, according to the BBC. Celestian says Ukraine's minerals and rare earth metals are the ones the U.S. needs and lacks.
These materials actually are used a lot in military applications, and so we need these in order to be able to defend ourselves from future threats. If we don't have these resources, then that puts us at a position where we're buying things possibly from enemy states.
He says this exchange deal could be beneficial for both parties if Ukraine is able to receive security in exchange for resources they already have, and if the U.S. is able to access these desirable mineral deposits in return.
These minerals are commodities. They're bought and sold all the time. And this is just a great way for the Ukraine to be able to export important materials that can help support other countries and allies around the world. And so if the United States is an ally with this country, then that's mutually beneficial for both parties.
Trump says he expects Zelensky to agree to the deal in their meeting this Friday. Zelensky, however, has made no guarantees. He said his support hinges on Trump's commitments to providing aid and security in return. For Annenberg Media, I'm Talia Wexler.
University of California health workers are going on strike. Their mission, to obtain better wages and more staffing opportunities for UC health workers to be able to serve their patients. Tessa Lapradez has the story.
And we absolutely will not be intimidated by UC's illegal actions. Am I right? And we're going to win, because when we fight, we win! When we fight, we win! Absolutely.
About 20,000 University of California employees gathered outside Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center to begin a 3-day strike. What are USC workers hoping to gain from the strike? Pay increases and better work pay. The University Professional and Technical Employees Local 3299, or UPTE, are representing the UC workers amidst tense negotiations with the UC system. AFS-CME, or the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, joined the union strike as an active defendant of service workers. Nurse case managers, clinical researchers, UC workers, and more people are fighting for fair labor practices. Alexis Alvarado works in the Clinical Research Unit in Hematology Oncology. She said that they alerted UC about the staffing crisis. Many months passed, but they never addressed the issue. The crisis is what she calls, quote, a danger to patient safety, end quote.
The reason that all of the UCs are on strike today and for the next 2 days is because this staffing crisis is affecting the entire university system all across the state. This is harmful to patients all across the state of California. It's really important that we're here today as a result of the University of California's unfair labor practices and to speak on these issues.
Striking workers at UCLA believe that the school has more than enough money to resolve these issues and increase their wages.
The university bought that building down there on LeConte, $174 million. And they said they didn't have money to pay us, and they said the raises they would give us and the hospital people would amount to less than $7 million. But they spent $174 million. So basically, that and the inequities of what people in the office, administrators, chancellors get housing and all that, and the people that work here, most of us are living check to check.
That was Ricky Frazier, UCLA South Campus's custodial lead, who went to the strike in support of new workers. Although he is about to retire in September, he believes the fight is a worthy one.
So I'm just out here supporting the new people, let them know that they need to stand up to this and to make sure that the union stays staunch against the university. So if they don't, I always tell a lot of the younger people, if they don't, then they can terminate people with cause. Can be anything. They'll start terminating people with cause, especially people that are in activity against what they think they should be in. If you say anything against administration or anything like that.
The workers and unions are working collaboratively to transform the 8 months of bargaining into tangible change, not only for themselves, but for the patients they serve. For Annenberg Media, I'm Tessa Lapradez.
Following USG President and Vice President Michaela Batista and Emma Fallon's victory Tuesday night, Annenberg TV News' Sebastian Soto spoke with them about the future of the student government and the plans and initiatives they hope to implement.
First of all, congratulations. Obviously an amazing achievement. What was the energy like in the room yesterday, and how does it feel to be the newest president and vice president-elect?
The energy yesterday was insane. It meant the world to have like all our friends and peers in the room with us, and seeing our pictures up on the screen, it was a total shock and just like immediately filled with gratitude and excitement. Me and Michaela, I sat right in front of her because just in case we won, we could do a hug, and it was perfect. It was just amazing.
Yeah, it was absolutely electric. Like the nervousness and build up was so like nerve-wracking, but then once we saw our photos up there, it just felt like everything paid off, and we're just so grateful. And now we're just so excited to get started for the next year.
There was also like so much build up to that moment. It was like all the senators went, and like we'd been waiting all day, all night, and then just for that to be the final result, we were really happy.
So good.
That's awesome. I know that you guys ran on a couple of campaign promises about ChatGPT Plus, some discounted programs for things like Uber and Lyft, and extended hours at Doheny Library. So we're just wondering, what are the next steps? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I guess our very first step is hiring cabinet, and that will really set the tone for next year. We're really excited to meet students who are very representative of the entire student body. So make sure to check out for a link that may be going out soon and apply, because we really want to make sure that we have a cabinet that will set the tone for our organization next year and believe in us, believe in our platform, so that we can get started on working on ChatGPT Plus, extending Doheny hours, RSO recognition resources, and we're just really excited to create a team that will work well together.
Yeah, and then like more concrete things. ChatGPT Plus discounted Lyfts and Ubers. That was part of our starting conversations in our platform, and the whole point of that was like to get the ball rolling, to start those conversations. So that means like talking to admin, beginning our research, what does this look like, and getting the ball rolling in that sense. So really excited to start doing that and getting a team of people to help us work on it. And then for Doheny hours, that's already been in the works. It's been something I've been working on. So continuing to talk to Doheny, looking at what we can do when the budget comes around, how can we prove student need for administrators to really pay attention to this lack of space for studying. So yeah, we're so excited to do all these things, and I can't wait to like get started.
That's awesome. And what's your message to the Trojan community as we begin your term?
Yes.
Thank you so much for voting. We are so grateful. We're so excited. We've said that a million times in the past 5 minutes, but we're just so grateful, and we promise we're going to get to work right away, and we really can't wait to do so.
Yeah, we always said like if we get elected, it would be an honor and a privilege to serve you guys, and just to have an overwhelming amount of support from students, from our friends, from peers in USG has meant the world to us, and it just fuels our fire even more to like really bring you guys the projects that you want to see and really advocate for your needs. So I think right now we're feeling passionate, we're feeling fired up, we're feeling ready, and also just really happy and so grateful, like so overwhelmingly filled with gratitude.
Awesome.
But
Michaela, Emma, thank you guys so much for being here. Really
Thank you
appreciate
so
your time.
much.
Thank you for having us.
I'm Katie Havens. We're glad you're with us for From Where We Are.
And I'm Sophia Ketterer. It's 14 minutes past the hour. Coming up, we dig into the future of the press under the new administration, we chat to community members trying to save Pantry Cafe, and we give our picks and predictions ahead of Oscar Sunday. It's been just over a month since Inauguration Day, and the Trump White House continues to make dramatic and controversial changes. This time, the administration is targeting press freedom. Danica Palmersheim has the story.
The White House announced yesterday that there will be unprecedented changes to press access within the White House. The White House Press Secretary, Caroline Leavitt, held the briefing and announced the news.
As you all know, for decades, a group of D.C.-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore. I am proud to announce that we are going to give the power back to the people who read your papers, who watch your television shows, and who listen to your radio stations. Moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team.
This is the most recent update in a saga of free speech controversies under the Trump administration. Previously, the Pentagon announced it would be rotating which news outlets had access to in-house press offices, changing out legacy media like NBC and the New York Times for pro-Trump outlets like One America News Network and Breitbart. Now, the same will happen with the White House. It's a radical departure from tradition that takes control of media access from the Independent White House Correspondents Association and gives it directly to the Trump White House. Here's Trump's press secretary again.
So by deciding which outlets make up the limited press pool on a day-to-day basis, the White House will be restoring power back to the American people who President Trump was elected to serve.
President Trump also recently banned the Associated Press from Air Force One and the Oval Office for refusing to change their style guide to recommend the Gulf of America rather than the Gulf of Mexico. Trump insisted upon the name change upon taking office. The White House addressed this in a statement on its website. It read, quote, "Asking the President of the United States questions in the Oval Office and aboard Air Force One is a privilege granted to journalists, not a legal right." The statement continued, quote, "We stand by our decision to hold the fake news accountable for their lies." These two recent moves against the press have raised questions about threats to the First Amendment. According to the U.S. Constitution, the First Amendment states that Congress shall not prohibit freedom of speech or freedom of the press. Former White House correspondent and current USC Annenberg professor Sam Youngman is concerned about what the White House's actions mean.
It's been a rough week for the First Amendment. It's been a rough week for people like me who hold the press dear and believe it has a vital, critical role to play in American democracy. What we're seeing is the erosion of press freedom here in the United States, the kind of thing that we'd be appalled if we saw it happen in another country, and now it's happening here.
Youngman says he's deeply concerned about what this means for the future of a free press in this country.
And I certainly hope this will be the motivation the White House press needs, or really Beltway reporters in general need, to start standing up for themselves and start standing up for the truth.
Questions have also been raised about the legality of the White House's actions. The AP filed a lawsuit against White House officials, claiming that prior precedent under the Due Process Clause and the First Amendment was violated. Benjamin Rad is a USC professor of the Gould School of Law. He says it is difficult to believe that there isn't an agenda here.
It's a situation where, let's say, the president were choosing which outlets based on ideology, outlook, preference, or skew political coverage were being excluded. If that's clear, then I think that there's a First Amendment question there, and I think that there should be access by all agencies. However, I understand if there's issues of limitation of space, logistical issues.
A Trump-appointed judge, Judge Trevor McFadden, ruled against the AP's emergency action lawsuit. Adrian Lawrence, a USC professor of the law of mass communications, said it's hard to tell whether White House access for the AP will be restored.
But I know the AP has incredible lawyers, so I think there are going to be nothing but the best arguments made. It's so difficult when you teach law now, because oftentimes I find myself in a position of saying this is how it should work, as opposed to this is the fact that it's going to be a crapshoot. We don't know how it's going to work in a Trump world.
Rad said when it comes to the AP lawsuit against the White House, right now it would be difficult to advance the ruling much further.
I don't think that it is necessarily entitled to access to the White House. It is deemed as a courtesy that has been extended without really much consideration for decades. I think now that this raises the issue of whether or not this is an attempt to silence speech.
The White House claims that this is a move to make journalism more accessible, rather than to exclude legacy media.
I would love to see more regional and small newspapers and radio stations and television stations included in the White House press, but that's not what this is. This is purely punitive, and it's replacing independent news organizations with news organizations that basically exist to lick Donald Trump's boots. They will not be delivering news. They will be delivering public relations that has been approved by the President of the United States. And everything they write, everything they say, everything they do is to get in his good graces. And that is not serving the American public. That's serving Donald Trump.
But there's also concern about the further action that will be taken.
It's the small changes that are important to stand up to, because if we continue to acquiesce to these little things, then the larger things are also going to come into play. And by allowing the behavior to continue, again, it is just mounting up for the larger things.
Youngman speaks on his personal experience of being a part of the press corps.
I will tell you, I have found in my years of experience that the American people, by and large, do not care even a tiny little bit about the daily travails of the White House press corps. A lot of this stuff is seen as sort of inside baseball and not having any impact on real people's lives. But I would caution against that. The stuff we think doesn't affect us has a way of catching up with us in the long run. And this sort of assault on the First Amendment, this sort of assault on holding our powerful leaders to account, to me, it's not just a slippery slope. It is a very, very dangerous game we're playing.
With things unraveling quickly, it is incredibly important to keep a lookout on all of the potential next steps of the White House and the media's coverage on it. For Annenberg Media, I'm Danica Palmersheim.
Is it the end for downtown LA's venerated Pantry Cafe? Longtime patrons and fans attended a dine-in today to support workers at the century-old eatery, which may close if the owners and workers can't agree on a union contract. Lizzie Leoto has the story.
Next week, LA's iconic Pantry Cafe faces closure. The Pantry Cafe has been open 24 hours a day for the last 100 years and is currently owned by former Los Angeles Mayor Richard Riordan's trust. After the cafe's announcement to close, Unite Here Local 11 filed an unfair labor practice charge with the National Labor Relations Board, alleging that the cafe violated federal labor laws by threatening to close. Unite Here Local 11 represents 32,000 workers employed in hotels, restaurants, and other establishments throughout Southern California and Arizona, including the Pantry Cafe. The organization has been in negotiations with the trust for the last few months, when it announced the cafe would possibly be sold. The choice to close it entirely came as a response to the unionization efforts. Maria Hernandez, the communications coordinator for Unite Here Local 11, commented on the threat this closure has on workers.
Now the workers here at the pantry have been here for 20, 30, some even 40 years. And really what they're advocating for is a fair union contract. The biggest thing right now is that workers are asking for is the opportunity to keep their jobs and keep their union.
This morning, longtime patrons and supporters of the Pantry Cafe workers gathered for a dine-in organized by Unite Here Local 11. Outside, in a line that went around the block, Javier, a Pantry Cafe regular, said he's sad to see it close.
I first came here with my father when I was like around 5 years old. And I was coming here with my younger brothers. I brought my wife and my girls here, so it's like a traditional thing, family to family.
Workers and customers alike are unwilling to see the historic cafe close. In an effort to gain support and raise awareness, Unite Here Local 11 workers handed out pamphlets and shared with people in line the importance of keeping the restaurant open.
Come out, we've been out here all morning. The line has been down the block consistently, and it's just been great to see the solidarity and people come together to hopefully tell the trust and the owners that they hope that the workers get what they're asking for. So it's been really great to just see the community come together in support of these workers.
Hernandez urged that this landmark needs to remain open.
It's more important now more than ever to keep these institutions that make LA what it is, open, so that everybody that comes from across the world is able to experience them and cherish them, and more than anything, have the opportunity to eat some of the great pancakes here.
Despite the potential close, Javier, like many Pantry Cafe regulars, remains hopeful.
I really hope it stays open, like I said, for other families to be able to enjoy it down the line. My girls be able to come here later on their own and bring their kids. So 100 years old. It's been around this long for a reason.
For Annenberg Media, I'm Lizzie Leoto.
Welcome back to Film Frequency, our weekly segment surrounding, you guessed it, films. With the Oscars coming up on Sunday, it's a big week for movies and movie lovers.
The one and only thing not to forget. You are one.
15. Cash up front. Jill.
For anyone who's gonna hold your attention on stage, you have to kind of be a freak.
Well gotten, Lawrence. It seems the responsibility for the conclave falls upon you.
You're green.
I am. May thy knife chip and shatter. Welcome to America.
Here with us in the studio to break down the award nominations is Annenberg media reporter and movie lover himself, Casey Loving. Thanks for joining us today, Casey, and welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. So much fun last time. So excited to talk about the Oscars.
Well, love to see you here again. So we were actually just shocked to find out that you've seen every single Oscar-nominated movie. As someone who's very educated on this topic, what are your overall thoughts and opinions? Just lay it on us.
I always think that every Oscars year is about the same quality, which is I think most of the things end up being pretty good, and you have a few things that are not very good. This year, Best Picture, I think 9 of the movies are quite good. I think there's one holdout that's not. And then as you go further down, I think, again, there are some real gems in international and documentary, and then a few things that aren't great.
What's the one?
Amelia Perez is not very good. Okay. You know, it's become the running joke, but yeah, that movie tries to do a lot, and it does about 2 things successfully and about 50 things not well. So,
interesting. Yeah. Well, I know you said there were like 9 in the running. Do you have predictions for which one's going to win the best one, or just any predictions in general? Since you seem to be very qualified to talk about this, you've seen all of the movies, which is insane.
It is my biggest thing every year. Most of winter break was spent like studying up so that I could do Oscars reporting. I think Anora is pretty safe in Best Picture right now. For a while, like this has been a really weird race because the past few years we've had clear frontrunners the entire time. That didn't happen this year. But Anora, which was a frontrunner several months ago, started coming back recently. It started winning a lot of the big awards, and I think at this point, that is locked up for Best Picture. A lot of other stuff I'm a lot more iffy on. So,
I feel like the general consensus of what I've been hearing is Anora too, but yeah. I feel like anything can happen. We'll see.
Yeah.
So before this, we were reading your article for Annenberg Media about some of the 2024 films that didn't get Oscar nominated.
Yeah.
Challengers was one of my favorite movies of last year, and that was at the top of your list.
Yep.
So I wanted for you to talk a little bit about that. You could talk about any of those movies on the list or Challengers in particular, and why you think they should have been nominated.
Yeah, so there are a lot of good movies that didn't get nominated. I mentioned I saw The TV Glow as like a very impactful story that I know meant a lot to a lot of people. I think it's very interesting that when we're looking at the 2 big like trans stories of the year, the Academy went with the one that seemed to speak more to cis people than queer people in my experience. There are other things like Furiosa. Shocked me that it didn't get any technical nominations, considering Fury Road was such a big winner. Challengers just doesn't make sense to me. The only way that I can rationalize it getting no nominations is that Luca Guadagnino had a second movie this year, Queer, which they thought was going to be a bigger player. I think because Queer was more of the like artsy dramatic film, they thought it would fare better than his pop film that he made earlier in the year. Neither one ended up getting any nominations because Queer is quite strange despite being very good. But yeah, I mean, Challengers, like I think the actors are deserving. I think the director's deserving. I think the screenplay is very deserving. I think it's well edited. It's well shot. Across the board, I'm just shocked that it got nothing. And so yeah. When I knew I was going to write this article, I knew, okay, that's going to be number 1. What are 2 through 14 going to be?
Mm-hmm. Just a follow-up question to that, you talked a little bit about trans representation and that appealing mainly to cis people. How do you think like representation overall in the Oscars like could be improved?
I think sometimes the Academy, they've done better. We're starting to get, the past few years specifically, we're starting to get a lot more international features, and you see that this year with 2 of the 10 Best Picture nominees being international features. We have I'm Still Here and we have Amelia Perez. I do think sometimes they sort of pick their delegate and then move on. It's notable that Nickel Boys and Sing Sing, which were both very celebrated films, they picked one of those to get Best Picture, and then the other one they left out. It almost felt like they were saying, like, and this is a very diverse body of voters, so it's not like there's one entity that is the Academy, but it felt like, okay, we have that film covered, we have Amelia Perez covered for our trans representation, we have this covered for this representation. Coralie Fargett was the one woman who was nominated for director. Again, we saw this last year. We got one woman nominated. Greta was not that woman, and so like that led to some controversy. So I do think as far as improving, I think diversity is improving and representation is improving. I do think they still need to get better about choosing more than one delegate for each group of people that aren't like cis, straight, white people.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then for all of us who aren't like you, who've dedicated our times to see all 50 movies, if someone wanted to watch like maybe 2 or 3 movies before Sunday, just they kind of like have some frame of reference, what would you recommend seeing were your top few choices?
I really, really, really love Anora. Anora is very funny. It ends up being very emotional. It's well edited. It's well directed. It has a great acting ensemble. I think that is one that a lot of people should seek out. I think if you want to go for some of the like smaller things, I think No Other Land, if you can access that documentary in the theaters that's playing at across the country, it is one of the most profound pieces of art I engaged with in the past year, and so I encourage pretty much anyone to go see that. Flow was a phenomenal animated feature that's on Max right now. It's about a cat surviving a flood, and there's no dialogue, and it's incredible. And then, yeah, like if you're a horror fan, watch The Substance. If you like period epics, watch The Brutalist. If you like good acting, watch Conclave. Like there's a lot of stuff for anyone's taste that you can seek out.
Yeah, sounds like there's a little bit for everyone, which is really cool. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Fun.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
And that's all the time we have today on From Where We Are. Sam Bittman, Ethan Huang, and Enzo Luna produced today's show. We had help from Lindsay Augustine and Christiane Ross.
Our audio coaches are Jamila Hammond and Leslie Bearstein Rojas. Our board operator is Wendy Lee. Our live stream manager is Kayla Shu. And Derek Renfro composed the theme music.
Catch us live on YouTube at Annenberg Radio News Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Subscribe to From Where We Are wherever you're listening right now. Finally, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Annenberg Radio. I'm Katie Havens.
And I'm Sophia Ketterer. From all of us at Annenberg Radio, wherever you are, we hope you'll join us again for
From Where We Are. So I think we found out that we're not really qualified to do film frequency.
That's
because
correct.
Sophia and I both have seen one movie out of the Best Picture nominations. What was yours?
So I saw Amelia Perez. Shout out to my dad for making me watch that lovely movie. Wouldn't recommend to a friend. And what did you watch?
I saw Wicked, of course, but I think I'm gonna take Casey's suggestions. Maybe watch Nora. My roommate said it was good.
Me too. I need to listen to you. You know what you're talking about.
Everybody get on watching their movies before Sunday.